Welcome back. So yeah, we took a quick look at the game that we're going to be demoing today. You were nice enough to walk us through the code there and explain some of it to us. We took a look at the tools that we're going to need, so we're pretty much ready to go with the actual porting part of it. So,
but before we get to that, there was that one question, do you have to use C# as a scripting language in my Unity game to be able to port Windows 8 or phone, or can I also use JavaScript or Boo?
You can use JavaScript for the Windows Store as well as the phone in some regards. The one thing, though, is you won't be able to use Boo as far as I know.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
So that was good. All right.
Anything else? No?
Nope, let's
good
continue
for now?
on. Yep.
So, yeah, feel free to queue up some questions for us. We'll take a few minutes at the end of this module again and answer some of those questions for you. So, yeah, I guess in this module, we're going to take a look at things to consider when porting. It's a very important thing to, think about what you're going to be doing as you're getting into the porting process. So for this, we're going to look at, porting your game, and we're also going to take a quick look at what's missing right now. So, the pitfalls that you might bump into because of these APIs and classes that are missing.
Right, because it is under development, and both sides of the fence are still working out different things, and there are certain reliances in one library the next that need to be shifted over. So
exactly.
That'll just take time, but it's happening.
Yeah. That's what we got the for now.
That's right.
So, porting your game, obviously, you've got to do, a few tweaks. It's never going to be just a one-to-one port unless you've got a very, very simplistic game. Things like using the platform-specific APIs or, in-app purchases, incorporating some of the hardware features, things like that. These are things that you want to consider when you're starting to port and kind of add that into your plan when you're thinking about it.
That's right.
Sometimes porting into a new platform has a few things that you want to incorporate in your game. So, like for today, we're talking about the share tiles, the share feature and the live tiles, as well as on the phone. We're taking a look at how to incorporate the back button, right?
Yep.
And we're going to be doing a little bit of accelerometer input as well. So these are things that you want to think about, like what does the hardware have that I could use to really enhance my game.
Right. There's always little differences or subtle changes that you could do, on one platform versus the other to really highlight why you want it on that platform. Sometimes people will prefer certain kinds of play styles. Some people love to play with a controller. Some people like to play with their touch. Other people just want a few minutes on their phone and they don't want to have to get their screen greasy, because some people don't like touching their screen even though it's a touch phone. They just want to tilt it and everything, and that's fine. So you look at the different pieces of each platform, what you could bring to that platform, but at the same time, sometimes you want to wait until you actually get the port done before you start adding those unique features to it, unless it's a necessity. I mean, if there's no controller that you can plug into your phone, it's a necessity. You have no choice but to do that change early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's some really good advice. Another thing too that you want to take a look at is the submission process. For every platform, it's going to be a little bit different, right? So you kind of want to walk through that and think about that. What TCRs, things like that.
Technical certification requirements.
Thank you. That you might have to take care of before you can actually submit.
Right. Yeah. All right. So also, when you're porting your game over, generally, actually, this happens before you're trying to port your game over. You want to try to keep your code as generic as possible. Avoid any hard-coded systems. If you're spending time to port your game to one or more platforms, you might as well make it in such a way that it's as effortless as possible, or you can do as many ports as needed. Not because ports are secondary and you're not going to make as much money. A lot of people have that stigma where they hear porting to be, it's a throwaway version of the game on this platform or whatever. They're just doing it as a cash grab. One part of that is because it has been that in the past when there was only one or two platforms, or there's only, there's a couple consoles and a secondary console that, people don't really care about and so on. But now there's so many. right? There's extra consoles that are coming. There's more coming in the future. The new generation is here. We have the old generation as well. And we have those hobbyist consoles out there too. On top of that, we've got all of the app stores and everything. We've got the Windows Store, the Windows Phone Store, and so on and so on. There's just so many platforms that you sort of need to hit to catch the same width of audience that you could have before. So it's important nowadays for most of us developers to start out with this in mind, as opposed to doing it as an afterthought. You can't treat it as I'll just do it when I get to it. There are certain things that, yes, that's how you will handle that. But at the same time, a lot of your code should be written in a nice generic manner that allows you the flexibility to shift screen sizes, to allow for extra space for touch controls and so on. A lot of games will just be, we're going to move it over to the phone. It's going to have touch controls. Well, you already used all that screen space for the HUDs, where you would typically put your thumbs or your fingers on the screen to control it. So now you've got to move your HUD around to make room for the touch area, and then you have even less room to see what you're seeing. So you got to pull out the camera, and then is stuff small enough that you can still click, like large enough that you can still click on it or not, and so on and so on. You run into all these problems just because it wasn't considered ahead of time when you were doing your GUI, when you're doing your icon layout, and so on and so on. So as we get better as developers and working with this larger environment of platforms, we're going to get better at predicting and understanding what it is that we need to keep generic or keep in mind as we do these things. So those are just things that you want to keep in the forefront of your mind when you're working on any title that you know is going to be pushed to more than one platform, regardless. And effectively that's called porting, but again, porting tends to leave a taste in gamers' mouths. They don't want to hear that word, but really that's what we are doing, regardless of the what the quality level is that they expect from a port to another console.
I think that's one of the draws too of Unity, is the fact that you're able to hit all these targets with one engine, right? So it saves you a lot of time in that regard, but still, you like you were saying, you have to keep these in mind when you're designing your GUI interfaces and like scaling your characters and stuff like that. That's the important stuff to keep in mind.
Right. So one way to do that also is to maintain a data-driven game design and things like that. It's very important to have, and keep your classes and functions as small and modular as possible. It'll also help you when you actually do have to do some heavy porting for some reason. You'll be able to implement one thing at a time, verify it works. Move on to the next thing, verify it works. Because each modular class and small function, you'll be able to bring over. The rest you can just stub in and do nothing, but you can still test the one you just brought over, make sure it works. Now bring the next one over, make sure it works. Bring the next one over, make sure it works.
Yeah, that's great advice. You want to make small changes, right, and test them thoroughly.
Small incremental changes over time will just cut down on the number of bugs and the more head against the wall time that you have later on if you don't do that kind of approach. And that's just more of an experienced game programmer speaking to everybody. You can definitely catch yourself in one of those, I don't know what is wrong, and I ported the whole game over. I call it divine programming when I'm talking to my students. You put it all together and you hope to some deity that it works in the end or whatever, right? It doesn't. You're shooting in the dark, and it's very hard to do that kind of entire port in one go. So I find it's better to break things down as small as possible, keep it modular, keep it flexible. It also allows you to swap out components when you need to for different control schemes, for example. You can pull out the part that deals with a controller and bring in the part that deals with the touch controls and so on instead. So just something to keep in mind. Try to keep it condensed, try to keep it modular and flexible, and that's just a good design practice for software engineers to get into the hang of anyways as soon as possible. The hard-coded nature of the old 70s and 80s and 90s games really should be gone, but I still see it in other companies that I work with and deal with. It still filters through, and we really need to get rid of it because technology changes so fast. By the time your game is ready to go, there's already 2-3 new platforms or stores or something to push it to that you now have to adapt to and get it into. It's just an ever-shifting, changing environment. So it's good practice.
Yeah, so keeping it modular helps keep you, future-proof your game a little bit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, some specific considerations around, building for the Windows Store and Windows Phone. One of the big things here that you're going to run into is this. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but the dual runtime environment.
Right.
So when your Windows Store apps are running on the Windows Store platform, they're running the .NET Core profile instead of Mono. And the .NET Core profile is actually a subset of the full .NET. So not everything that is in the .NET is actually in the .NET Core profile. Also, the Windows Phone apps, when they run against their platform, they're running the .NET Windows Phone runtime as opposed to running Mono. And again, the .NET Phone or for Windows Phone is a subset of the full version. So that's got it's a few hangups there.
Yes,
some things might be missing, and we'll take a little bit deeper look at what might be missing there. So basically, that means that you're likely to run into a few issues where classes that are available in Mono aren't actually available to you in the subset .NET versions.
And it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Most of them are replaceable, or you can stub in your own, and we'll go through how to sort of approach that.
Yeah. In the next module, we'll take a little deeper dive into that, and we'll give you some tips and tricks on how you can handle stuff like that. So if you are experiencing compiler errors in your Unity code, this could be some of the following issues, right? You've got things like the hash tables missing. So if you're using hash tables and you run your code, suddenly your compiler's spitting out errors, and that's basically because that's not implemented in the .NET subset that you're actually using. Method overloads, a lot of those have been changed or missing. So one of the most notable ones that I bumped in personally is the string format.
Yes, yeah, right? that one's probably quite common if people run into that one.
Yeah, so the overloads are a little bit different, so that's definitely something you want to keep an eye on, and they're the most common errors that you're going to see pop up.
Right.
And of course, when you're porting, you want to minimize the amount of changes that you're making, right? So if you do have a class or an overload that you're using in your code, one of the best ways to go about that is maybe to write it yourself.
Yes.
Right? So you rewrite the class or the overload and put in the features that you're expecting to be there.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's one really good way of handling some of these issues.
And at the same time, you want to keep the naming similar to what you expected to be there. That way, when it does catch up or anything like that, you can switch back to theirs if you want, or you can keep the one you have because now you've really put some time into it and you understand it maybe better, or it has certain specific features that you would prefer. But I've had to do that before, and same thing happens with SDK updates and other things like that. There's always going to be little changes in different platforms as you go on that you have to adapt to or tweak. Not just at the code level, but also as a higher level with achievements or something that you're building into. So trying to, again, it comes back to having that nice generic code where you can fill in something for now that is going to be suitable, it's going to work the way you need it to, and when something else catches up or you're ready now to shift over to that platform, because you don't want to keep doing porting bits and pieces of little code back and forth because you're always going to be in this state of flux, right? So a lot of people will just work with their own systems for now, using the naming schemes of what they know is coming, and then later do it, just set aside a day or whatever and bring everything in line, test it all, and then continue on. And that process and that you start to get used to as a developer, especially with the rampant change of the industry and everything anyways.
So that's definitely a good way of approaching it anyway. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's missing right now in this. So for the Windows Store apps, some of the things that you're going to be missing right off the top are the network classes. So if you're trying to do multiplayer, that's not included. The default Unity multiplayer APIs aren't there. The www is supported, so you could do things like call web pages and stuff like that from inside your Unity code. But if you're trying to do the basic Unity multiplayer, it's just not there right yet.
Right, the basic Unity multiplayer isn't there yet, but with the www support, you can still do all of your intrinsics and your analytics, right? You can send out the data that you need for doing heat maps or seeing what your users are interested in and giving them ads and everything else. You can still get all that data to them through the www protocols and everything like that, but the multiplayer support piece is still missing, at the moment. Yep.
One of the other things that's missing right now is the animation on script variables. So basically this is like if you're trying to change a variable inside of an animation state, that's just not there for you right yet. Another one that around the animation is the animation event callback functions. So you can pass in a function without any arguments, or that includes an animation event argument.
Right. So it's not fully supported. It's partially supported in that
yes.
way at the moment. Yes, that's right. So you can still do some of that.
Yes, exactly. The game object.send message partially works, but right now the message must match the message sent, right? So you can't do argument conversion at this point.
Right.
Another big one that a lot of people might be thinking of is the fog feature. This doesn't work on devices that are running on the feature set that's lower than 9.3.
Right. So it'll work on your newer ones.
Yeah.
But it because of the chips and things, it's not
exactly. So you want to check and see what you're supporting, what hardware you're trying to support, and see whether or not that it meets that feature level. Of course, there is a way to manually implement this, and we've included the link here in the slides. I know that's a really long link, so I don't expect you to be able to copy it down right now. But later on, you can go through the slides, or on demand, you'll be able to grab that.
Yep. And then that approach is just doing it through a shader, anyways, that will simulate fog. So I mean, there are other ways to do it as well, and different kinds of fog that you can look up for shaders and so on. So it's not a critical feature. It's just everybody's used to using it in Unity. So simply just go into the environment settings and change the fog, change the color, and you're happy with it. But that's part of Unity can only do so much at the moment, and you'll see other games writing their own fog systems and their own fog shaders to be able to get like the low-level cemetery mist and things like that, or using particle
and the distance
effects.
Draw effect,
right? And distance draws and things like that. So there are other ways out there. To do this same thing that you can find online if you just Bing it and go look for it. There are other ways to fill that gap for now if you want to get in immediately into the store and pop it out rather than wait for the Unity or whatever side it is to get that support in there. And I guess it will likely never go back to the older devices anyways, because they may get a software update that might allow it, but I assume
chances are,
moving forward though, support is there, so it's okay.
So yeah, that's the major ones that are missing that you're probably going to bump into on the Windows Store side. So let's take a few minutes and take a look at the ones that are missing on the Windows Phone side.
Okay.
So some of the things that are missing right now, APIs that are still work in progress. So this means that they might be out. You might be watching this on demand a little bit down the road. So definitely Bing these and make sure that they're correct.
Again, general warning to everybody: these will change as time goes by. So
rapidly.
Please verify anything beyond the live broadcast.
But at the time of writing these slides, this is what was supported. So right now, Compass support it's not available, as well as location services. That is still a work in progress. Webcam support.
Okay.
That's another one that's missing.
Not too many games have that at the moment.
Not too many, right? But I have done augmented reality.
That's true.
Right?
You
do. That's one of my passions is augmented reality. So not having the webcam support can kind of slow me down there.
That's right.
Right. As well as microphone support. So if you're doing the next karaoke type game, you might have a little bit of issues on the phone right now.
Okay.
Some other APIs that are missing, of course, is the networking APIs are missing, just like they were on the Windows Store. They're also missing on the Windows Phone for now. So again, you have the basic www implementation, so you can still use that stuff. But right now, the basic multiplayer networking that's available in Unity just isn't working. But you can use .NET APIs.
That's true, and that's part of the problem is that there's a shift from the mono over to the .NET.
Yes,
and that's where that lag time is. But you can implement your own, as you said, with the .NET.
Yeah, or you can look for third-party examples like Photon.
That's true. The Photon is out there.
Yeah, I've used Photon personally in a couple of applications that I've been working on for the Windows Phone store. It's very easy to use. I actually found it was pretty easy to implement. So
a good alternative for those that need something that sort of
right
works
now,
out of the box
If you need something right now and you don't want to sit down and write your own code, that'd probably be a good way to go.
All right.
Right now, GPU profiling on the Windows Phone is not available.
Okay.
So if you want to test and see what how much you're using the GPU wise, that's not available right yet. Of course, work in progress.
Yep.
Application the OpenURL is not implemented on the Windows Phone, but of course we've included a little link here that you can check out that'll talk to you a little bit about how to use Windows Phone web browser task to kind of implement this.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about what's missing, right, and what you can expect to bump into when you're working on these platforms. Right. Again, like we suggest, if it's something, you know, like an overload or a class that you might be missing, your best bet could be just to implement it yourself.
Right, that's right.
So you're not changing the internal code so much, and it kind of cuts down on the overhead.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Got any good questions popping up in chat right now?
Let me just take a quick. We got a couple thank yous from answering the other ones. That's good. Oh, and somebody likes your shirt, by the way, and they want to know where you got it.
Actually, up in Canada, where we're from, actually, we've got the developer movement going on, which is a Microsoft program where you can actually earn points by submitting your games and apps to the store. So I just thought I'd throw it on there to give a quick shout out to that promotion that we're doing. I personally love it. You know, you can.
And can they get one of those shirts from the points?
I'm not sure about that, but if you visit us at some of the conferences that we attend, you'll be able to get your hands on one of them, hopefully.
Alrighty, let's see what else we got in here. No, I think what does WWW stand for?
World Wide Web.
There you go. So, in case
that was an easy one, thanks.
Yeah, that's true. World Wide Web. There you go. And I think that's it for right now. That unless I have to go back here and look through them. So we'll get to any other ones that I've missed that have scrolled off my page if I can't find them. Maybe
we'll take a few minutes in the break and we'll go through and see if we can find any questions that we can answer.
So what's coming up next?
Coming up next, we're going to talk about dealing with the dual runtime environment. So that'll be a good module. It will really sink our teeth into what you can do and things to handle this.
So we'll take about 10-minute break and we'll see you then.